Hi everyone, my name is James McCafferty. I'm the Chief Information Officer at the Wellcome Sanger Institute, having been there 2.5 years altogether. In this presentation, I wanted to talk about core informatics at the Wellcome Sanger Institute, specifically talking about our data management approach and our informatics strategy. And also at the end of this presentation, I'll talk a little bit about the futures here, specifically thinking about what I call the digital transformation of our science. Before I get onto that though, I wanted to give you some quick background on the Wellcome Sanger Institute itself. So the Wellcome Sanger Institute was formed over 20 years ago as part of the UK's response to the Human Genome Project. It's based in Cambridge in the UK and is oriented around 5 main scientific programs. Those cover human genetics, cancer, somatic mutation, also parasites and microbes. We do a lot of cellular genetics work, and more recently a new program, Tree of Life, which is aimed at sequencing all living plants and animals in the UK. That's over 70,000 species. We consider ourselves to be doing science at scale. I guess that's one of our chief attributes. The Institute itself has over 100 informaticians, that's full-time informaticians, spread across multiple teams, both central teams and teams in the different scientific programs. And informatics is also a key competence for so many of the wider community here in the Wellcome Sanger, especially as we move more and more from wet lab to dry lab. I've included some key stats here to give you a sense of the scale at which we operate, and at the bottom of that slide you can see what we think of as our main value chains, which is to say we cover off sample to data, meaning biological samples to generate data, say from instruments, sequencing data and the like. The analytics to get from that data to genuine scientific insight. And then finally, insight to outcome, which is about generating knowledge, among other things. So that's about the institutes. And you've probably guessed just from what I've said already, data is very much our lifeblood, supporting our science with world-leading, but also cost-effective data services. And that's the challenge for me and my team. We operate at massive scale. We have to deal with new and emerging data types, particularly most recently spatial, multi-omics and the integration that goes with that as well. So we need to very much proactively manage our data. And that could be managing the volume of it. So I mentioned here in the slide, tiering data storage, edge computing as well, where we can introduce new instruments that have onboard compute. But also tools like electronic lab notebooks for capturing metadata, making it easy for our staff to do the right thing for supporting effective data here in the Sanger. So you'd think from what I've said that we just absolutely love our data. And this slide gives you an indication as to what that means. On the right-hand side, it shows the recent growth in one of our main data stores, the iRod system. Admittedly, I've chosen this to make a bit of a point, but it does reflect the growth in scientific data and new instruments and new modalities, as well as increasing the science that we do in any case. And why does that happen? Well, if you have a look on the left, I've taken this graphic just from the web, and there's lots of them, and it gives an indication as to why we see such growth. It's a standard research data life cycle. I'm sure you've seen it before. And of course, it always occurs to me, nowhere in that life cycle is there anything about deleting data or even archiving it. So for us, in managing our data storage, we very much focus on proactively managing archive, managing deletion, eradicating duplication where we can, and also compression. We do a lot of human genetics work, and just simply moving from, say, the BAM format to CRAM, which is the compressed version, it gives us around a 30% saving, a lossless saving in data storage requirements. Now, I won't go through every single topic listed here, but I wanted to include this to give you a sense of the sorts of things in our data management strategy. We're still developing it at the moment, but I'm sure all of you there are struggling with challenges in these kind of areas. The approach we're taking here is reviewing our current capabilities using a capability maturity model. And I'm sure you've come across those previously, where you track your progress in stages, going from maybe chaotic all the way through to optimized, and track the stages that you move through. Here specifically, I wanted to stress just the last point there about training, skills and culture. We do have some full-time data curators here in the Sanger Institute, but generally managing data is everyone's job. So that means we have to have the right training available, the right skills, the right tools, but also the right culture as well. And that extends to aspects like data ownership, being able to properly share and reuse data, as well as getting the quality right. And a lot of that comes down to getting the metadata right. So I've talked about data there. I wanted to talk about informatics as well, which is, of course, making sure that we are getting best value out of the data. And again, the increasing moves that we see going from wet lab to dry lab science, then informatics is increasingly seen as a key means of extending and accelerating our science. But we do have our challenges. I've highlighted their technical debt, where we have ages-old systems that we need to support. I've got no shortage of systems written in Perl, and supporting those over the years becomes more and more difficult. So we're focused on the usual mantra of standardizing, simplifying, and automating. And the more that we can do there means the more time and effort and energy that we can free up among our informaticians to support our new science methods is key. And I've highlighted their increasing roles in artificial intelligence and machine learning towards genomic science. And in particular, we've just recently started a partnership with the Alan Turing Institute in the UK, which is a leading AI institute. We do make use of public cloud, but generally it tends to be for smaller scale specific needs rather than the volumes of data and compute that we have in our own data center. I'm showing here, this is our informatics strategy on a page, and this is the means that we try to communicate our informatics strategy to the wider scientific community. You'll see in here a point about building our capabilities. That includes new platforms such as we've recently introduced Omero Plus for spatial data. It's a powerful database, but also selection of workflow engines and the like. We use a lot of Nextflow, but I'm conscious Nextflow isn't necessarily suitable for all workflow applications. You'll also see in there increasing use of Agile, and that's not just for informaticians. We're trying to encourage scientists to adopt Agile techniques in their scientific projects. And we've also made a point of restructuring the governance around our informatics work so that we can make sure that we are working on the right things at the right time. There's a big talent piece in here, growing our informatics talent, and that really underpins the kind of strap line at the top of the slide about having the best genomics informatics community in the world. It may not be the biggest, but we certainly want to be the best. So to that end, we've introduced a lot of coaching and mentoring schemes, encouraging assignments, training, secondments, and also a graduate scheme as well. We work closely with GA4GH, that's the Global Alliance for Genomics Health, especially around standards and interoperability for informatics and data. And also, most recently, trusted research environments, where we've been collaborating with the University of London. Now, a key part across all of this is building up the right kind of communities, and we've recently been setting up what we call communities of practice. You've probably come across communities of practice before. The idea is to have grassroots communities that can help us all improve in specific areas, regardless of where individuals sit within an organisation. And that helps us move away from the silos that tend to emerge in different programs, or particularly between the central functions and individual science groups. So we've already set up a number of these, one in machine learning, one in workflow tools, and another one in agile project management. Now, if you're familiar with communities of practice, you might be aware that there's quite a bit of theory around how to get the best out of individuals in a community of practice. A common question is, well, what's in it for me to be part of a community of practice? What do I get out of it? And on the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see a reference to Wenger's dualities for communities of practice. And a key part of that is getting the right balance between the kind of bottom-up grassroots ideas that individual informaticians may have, but also making sure that we're linked up and support the programme objectives of the Institute overall. And my team's role here, the central team's role, is about helping, encouraging and insisting the communities that we have for informatics. On the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see a curve. It's called the Abernathy curve. And it shows how technologies and tools and platforms evolve over time. So on the left-hand side of that curve, so much of that is about new tech, new programs, new approaches being developed by our scientific programs. And as they become more popular, either within the institute or outside, that more and more people are starting to use them, then the migration happens to the right of that curve, where they become centrally supported. And the thing to point out here, the two lines, are that on the left, the focus is largely about what can the software do, what can the system do. On the right, where it's supported centrally, the focus is a lot more on making sure it's robust and reliable and reducing the cost to serve. And that takes me to my last slide, which is what I'm calling the digital transformation of our science. Now, all businesses, all human endeavours recently have been undergoing digital transformation. And science is no different. So that means increased use of digital techniques and technologies, more digital infrastructure, digital models, right across all aspects of our scientific work. And we've most recently seen this in some of our projects centred around our laboratory management systems and our electronic lab notebooks for supporting all of our lab work. But in actual fact, it applies to all aspects of our science. And I've highlighted there an example about large language models, where we'll see literature searches becoming more and more an interactive conversational approach. Another example worth quoting there is our use of Jupyter notebooks, and effectively they're an extension of the processing flows that go through our labs with electronic lab notebooks and laboratory information management systems, where the Jupyter notebook puts the power in the researcher's hands as best possible. So I'm trying to give you a flavour of the sort of digital end-to-end approach that we're trying to adopt. We see it as reducing the time to science, which is important, but also the time to insight as well. And thinking about the futures in this space, the sheer volume of increasingly sophisticated data that we have to build models means that the models themselves become more and more sophisticated. So I think we can look forward to a world where we see generative foundational models in silico that will capture all aspects of biology for any particular scientific question. And those models will be the first port of call for any scientist before they go into the lab. And the last point I've got there too is research outputs. So again, we'll see a digital transformation of those. I mentioned Jupyter notebooks. So Jupyter Hub in the cloud, so for example, Google Colabs, is an excellent way of doing more collaboration with partners, where researchers are putting not just programs and data, but setting up environments to run in the cloud so that their collaborators or even the public generally can bring data to the existing environments without the need to be setting up complex systems. Okay, that's my final slide. I just wanted to summarise a little bit. I hope I've given you a sense of the Sanger and the the sheer dependency of the science on core data and informatics. So getting the strategies right in this area is really important. For data, it's about proactively managing it and making sure we're getting best value from it. And in informatics, very much trying to build our skills and capacities, the kind of models that we use and the tools that we have access to. But to be honest, the data and informatics piece is largely the table stakes in order to progress further with this digital transformation of our science. So I will finish up there. Thank you very much for listening. I'd be keen to take any questions or feedback that anyone may have. Thank you.